My name is Reginald Prince. I'm the Vice President of Operations for a new nonprofit called Quest Behavioral Development Group. Our focus is eradicating the mislabeling of marginalized students. Now, when we began, it was a real focus on working with African American males because in the Twin Cities, there's a tendency to use what's called the emotional behavioral disorder label as a classroom management tool. It's a way of dealing with kids and moving them along, but it's also almost a catalyst for the school to prison pipeline. We were talking earlier and I was explaining to him, there's a study of current prison population that shows that 90% of African American males that are in custody have some kind of learning disability that's undiagnosed. And usually what happens for kids in a school setting, they have some kind of learning disability, but they act out and they disrupt the classroom. But rather than diagnose that, it's easy to put the EBD label on them. And EBD is not a clinical diagnosis. It is a 100% subjective label. The final rubber stamp comes from someone with credentials, but the people who actually do the assessment, they don't have credentials, at least not as clinical assessors. So that's our organization. At the conclusion of my presentation, I'm gonna call our president up and let him tell you a little bit more about it. But let's talk about why we're here today, motivation interviewing. What do you know about motivation interviewing? Anything? All right, good. I can tell you anything and you'll believe me, right? So, motivation interviewing is a way of being with people that was developed by a guy named William Miller back in the 70s. He was working with chemical dependency clients, and what he found was that the practices that people were using, it wasn't effective. I mean, I don't know what you know about the history of CD treatment, but there was a lot of shaming going on, right? If you were an addict, it was considered to be a violation of your character, right? A failure of character. So they used to do things like put people in dunce hats or sit them in the corner in diapers and things of that nature. So there really wasn't much positive outcome coming out of that situation. What Miller noticed was that if he took some of Carl Rogers' theories behind person-centered listening and mixed that with sort of this forward focus, that he was having real positive outcomes with people. And so ultimately what happened is he wrote his doctoral thesis on his practice, and he started traveling around the world introducing it to people. Well, he got over to England and he met that gentleman to the right, there you go. And his name is Steve Rowland. He's a teaching physician at Oxford. Now this gentleman was actually using Miller's doctoral thesis to teach his doctor's bedside manner. And that's how they became kindred spirits. And what they formed was the original book, but also an organization that's an international organization. MI has been translated into 28 different languages. They hold forums to bring all of us trainers together that have been kind of indoctrinated. Either this year, I think it's in Dublin, Ireland. Last year it was in New Orleans. So it's an international phenomenon. It's more than just the flavor of the month. So that's kind of your history and your background to it. Here's your definition. It's a person-centered form of guiding to elicit and strengthen a person's intrinsic motivation for change. Now, when you hear that, what words jump out to you? Collaborative. Why so? Yes, right? And we're going to talk about it a little bit more, but when we talk about collaboration, it's creating a level playing field. It's not having like this one-up stance with people. It's actually taking a lesser stance when working with someone who needs your help. So the real thing we're going to touch on today is what we call the spirit of motivation interviewing. Now, this is what separates MI from other interactions, a way of working with people, because it's an intentional way of being with people where I believe that you want to be healthy and whole. But at a deeper level, I believe that you're capable of being healthy and whole. Now, that sounds like common sense, right? Well, sense ain't common, like my granddaddy used to say, because a lot of people function and we have a lot of biases and a lot of labels that kind of get in the way and really guide how we look at the people that we work with. Well, the spirit of MI helps to remove those. And it's broken down into 4 different components. There's acceptance, partnership, collaboration, evocation, and compassion. But the thing we're going to focus on today in particular is the one about acceptance, right? In the Bible it says faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of these is love. Well, here, the greatest of these is acceptance, and we're going to really break that down. Let's begin with absolute worth. Yep. So what is your definition? What does it mean to embrace the concept of absolute worth?
You, I love. It's everything about you, not your eyes, not your clothes, not your toys, way down deep inside you. It's you, it's you, it's you.
Wow. I like that. I like that. And you're on the right street, right? And it's deeper than that, right? It's separating the sin from the sinner. You are not the sum of your actions or your choices. You are a human being, and by being a human being, you have a right to be treated with dignity and with respect. And despite what you do, I still love you. Like, I'm still here with you and able to work with you. That doesn't mean that I condone your behavior. It doesn't mean that it's okay for you to do bad things. It just means that no matter what you do, you'll still get that same level of acceptance from me. The term that's often kind of equated to this is unconditional positive regard. Have you heard that before? Well, that's really what we're speaking to here. Now, I want to ask you, though, because it's easy to come up with a definition, but what's the positive regard? What's the absolute worth of that kid that just comes in and is rude and only showing up because he's made to show up? Every time you try to talk to him, he just put his head on the desk, and if any interaction he has with you, it's hostility and sometimes vulgarity. Where's the absolute worth in that student?
He's still there.
And he's still human, right? And by virtue of being a human, he has a right to be treated with dignity. That's where unconditional positive regard comes in. It's this idea that we are equal and we're working together. That makes sense to everybody? Now imagine, how would that be of benefit in volunteering? Just this concept alone, to embrace this, how would this serve you as a volunteer? Anybody?
Be motivated to just keep coming back.
Absolutely, right? Say again? Sorry. Raise your hand and the mic man will hit you.
Oh, to persevere and to keep volunteering and keep coming back.
Yes, absolutely. Everybody get that? Really? Oh my Lord.
I'm gonna keep saying it until you get it.
You're knocking off the floor.
I mean, just to feel that they are human and worth it, and to just keep coming back no matter what it takes.
There you go, right? No need to hold a grudge, no need to take ownership of anything. You're human, let's work together. So now, second group, you had support for autonomy. Who's the spokesperson? All righty.
Not creating dependency, but dignity of risk, allowing to fail.
Oh,
Providing opportunities to do their own thing, opportunities to try with support. Encouraging to be true to the self and asking them what they want.
I'm gonna put some of that on my next slide. And I'm giving you no credit for it. I'm gonna be honest with you. That was incredible. And it's really our awareness that people have the right to choose to change or not to change. It's not on us. I mean, the effort we put in, I mean, the way we show up and the strategies we use may play some part, but at the end of the day, the choice lies with the individual. Now, if we can embrace that, that'll go a long ways toward reducing our burnout, right? The idea that, oh my God, that kid's still failing, I must not be doing enough, right? Or that parent isn't contributing the way they need to, maybe I could do a little bit more. When you do that, you begin to take the power away from the individual and you put them in a position where they become dependent. You remove that idea of self-sufficiency. Now, I'm gonna take it a step further though. It's more than just our awareness of this, it's helping the person we serve become aware that they have that power and control. How many people do you work with believe that they have no choice in certain situations, in a lot of situations, right? That they're just subjugated to whatever situation that they're in, and circumstances drive everything about them. If we can help to expand our clients' awareness of that power and control that they have, it'll go a long ways toward building their self-efficacy, their belief in their own ability to be able to do something. Even for a young student, right? We'll talk about some things in a little bit to be able to enhance that, but it's really an active thing that we do. It's not just, oh, I know you're making choices. It's no, you are making choices. You can make choices. Now, I always do this with a caveat. I taught a class about 9 months ago, and there was a young lady in my class that's getting her doctorate in feminism. University of Minnesota is the only university in the country that still offers a doctorate in feminism. She challenged me on this. She said, everybody don't have a choice. Well, really the way she framed it, it made perfect sense to me. When you're working with marginalized groups, their choices are limited. Whereby, take Chris, for instance, please work with me. Chris, as a white male, has a wide variety of choices potentially in front of him to be able to resolve situations, to move forward, to gain advantage, but it's just a wide swath. Me as a black male, if we're in the same situation, my choices may be a little more confined. But the thing is, I still have a choice within that. And it's helping people to really understand that you do have power to make decisions for yourself. All right, that's good with y'all? All righty, so the next one was affirmation. Who had that one? All right, thank you, work with me.
With affirmation, we said that you could support, you were supporting someone. I have a teacher voice.
Yes, you do, yes, you do. Good job, good job.
We're in trouble. It's a way, it gives someone a way to look at themselves in a positive way. And the message that they can do it.
Wow.
And in order to give them that message, we have to really believe that they can do it.
Yes.
And identification of their strengths, helping them identify their strengths and lean into those with encouragement and building on the positive.
Y'all need to stop volunteering and get some jobs around the places I've been teaching.
Because
I've been like, wow.
I was a middle school teacher. I knew that.
That is 100% what it is. Focus on what they can do, not what they can't. Again, it doesn't remove the idea of accountability. What it says is that that's not going to be the focus of my interaction with you. A lot of times, people lack the confidence to be able to accomplish things. It's really rooted in their sense of self-worth, and again, that term self-efficacy, right? The belief that, in what I can do, what I'm capable of. Sometimes we as practitioners, we become kind of lenders of that strength. You can identify things that they may not even be aware that they're demonstrating and be able to show them that you are capable of X, Y, and Z. But it has to be genuine though. It's gotta be specific. It's gotta be realistic. I mean, we're not gonna sit there and embellish and blow it out of proportion because then we lose that authenticity and it could lead to separation in the relationship. So tell me this, how would the concept of staying strength-based be of benefit to you as a volunteer? Anybody?
It's more fun to work with somebody who's succeeding than somebody who's failing. So if you approach them through the things that they can do, then those will lead them through.
Ah, wow. Seriously, y'all some good people. I ain't just saying that.
Say it one more time.
It's more fun to work with someone who's succeeding than with someone who's failing. So if you approach them from the perspective of their strengths, then they will lead you forward and you can get to build them up.
Yes,
But if
ma'am.
you only focus on failure. Failure begets failure.
Oh. Again, can I get a copy of this tape? Because I'm going to use this in my next training, for real. But all joking aside, it is a way of being with people. It's not just this tacit idea that we sit back and kind of hold on to it. We are actively performing these first three concepts. Last one, empathy. Who had it? Tell me about it.
We talked a bit about the difference between sympathy and empathy, and that empathy needs to be actually willing to engage in the feeling, not just have the feeling. And then we also talked about accuracy, and then the difficulties that we might have because of our limited understandings, or because we do have those wider choices, that we're not accurate at really knowing what the other person can do.
I want to stretch you a little bit by saying it's having a genuine curiosity into the person. like how they see the world and how they interact with things. It's beyond just saying the words that they say or understanding, because empathy is not sympathy. You hit the nail on the head. Sympathy is equated to pity, and pity does nothing for anybody. It is disempowering. It really is condescending. It's not identifying with the person. It's not having had the same problem. Just because you may have struggled as a student does not mean you know what it's like to struggle as a student for that individual sitting across from you. What accurate empathy does is it takes us to sit down and understand how that person sees the world and how they see their problems. And it's not an easy skill, but it's one that can be learned, and we're gonna practice it right now. So, now I need everybody in the room to figure out which one of those you wanna do, right? In the yellow. What it was like you growing up, what your ideal future would be, or a situation you've had that may be difficult for other people to understand. Because the way this is gonna work is, you're gonna talk about that story, and you're gonna tell that story for 3 straight minutes, uninterrupted. The listener can't say a word. But at the end of the 3 minutes, the listener will have an opportunity to capture the essence. And what do I mean by that? I mean, you're gonna capture that underlying story that's kind of running through the story that you hear. Right? You're gonna go deeper and find maybe some values that they speak to, some strengths or character traits that they kind of expose through their story. And then you'll share that with them. And as you share it, they can respond, and then you just kind of go back and forth until you fill a joint up. We clear on the instructions? Well, it don't matter anyway, because I'm gonna show you. So, I am going to tell my story for 3 minutes. You got the timer, brother? And in those 3 minutes, y'all are my listener as a group. Now, I want you to listen to my story and be able to capture the essence of what I said. And then I'll put you in pairs and you can do it together. But I'll coach you through the back end of it. So, you ready? All right, so what it was like for me growing up. I grew up in Mississippi, which is a whole different country. My son now goes to school at Southern Miss, and he realized Mississippi is a third world country. It really and truly is. But it's actually pretty cool. Like, we lived in Vicksburg, but really in the county, so we were like 7 miles outside of the city. And if you didn't have a car, you basically lived in the country, right? And we didn't have a car. So it was like a row of neighborhoods, and then it was like forest, and then a row of neighborhoods, and then a farm, right? So everything was really separated, but then so it was also concentrated. Now, I remember my mama waking us up in the summertime, kicking us out the house, and locking the front door. If you wanted water, you had to get it out the hose. And if you wanted food, well, if you had food at your house, then you'd come, maybe you and your friends would come back there. But if you didn't, well, maybe Miss Dawes had some food. Or maybe Miss Noy had some food, or Miss Connie, or one of them, right? And you just go to wherever the food was. And nobody ever really considered anybody to be like less than because of that. And nobody ever judged anybody because of it. It was just the way it was, right? I remember I called Angie Dawes a female dog. Please forgive me. But my mama heard about it after Miss Pearl took a swing at me, Miss June got a lick at me, and Miss Caldwell actually chased me up to my mama's door and told her what I did. Then when I got home, I got the real butt whooping. But what was crazy, my mama wasn't mad at them other women at all, right? It was just the way it was. Like, it wasn't many men in the neighborhood, but the few that there were, like Mr. George, Mr. Cooper, Henry, they would actually take some of the boys hunting and like move us around, and they'd play basketball with us. I still remember Mr. George out there sweating like a mule out there playing with these teenagers. But it was just an effort to really just give us some male bonding. But it wasn't anything that was like overt, where they sat around and said, hey, you need a man in your life. They just did what they did. Like, there was this one guy, he had a garden, and he used that garden to pay his bills, right? So he'd go out and sell the vegetables. We messed around his garden because we were trying to get some food. He went and told all our parents, hey, if you keep your kids out of my garden, I'll teach them how to garden, and I'll set a little plot off to the side. And so he did. And we all learned how to garden. And I'm telling you, to this day, I can plant mean vegetables. But nobody ever like overdid it in the garden, or like, took more than what they needed. I remember the main thing that always became an issue was those orange meat watermelons. I don't know if you ever had one before, but they sweet, and they don't have them up here. But we just all kind of got along, and everybody was in kind of the same circumstance. Like, people's lights get cut off. Like, sometimes people would borrow water from us to flush their toilet, or vice versa. One time they came and cut the lights off to our house. So we went out and took the meter off, took the tabs off, put it back on. So then they came and put a lock on, and we broke the lock off, put it back on. So then they came and they took the meter, so we made our own little wires, stuck it in the joint, put it, and so they came and cut the wires to the house. We spliced it all back together, put the wires back in there. They put a note on the door, say, pay us when you get the money, you're gonna kill your damn selves. I'm serious, that's what the MP&L put it on the front door. But it wasn't like people thought negatively of us. All righty, so now, what did you hear in that story? Not the exact words I said, what kind of values did you pick up on, like underlying story that's within there? You got to raise your hand so you can bring in the mic.
What I picked up from the story was it sounded like everybody was in the same social position. Everybody was working together as a community, and nobody was comparing themselves to somebody else, and there was not a lot of judgment.
And that's the big thing, too. Nobody was really comparing themselves. There's one dude in the neighborhood, Kevin Smith, and I'll throw his name out there. He was the only one to act like he was better than everybody else. But all the other kids, all the other families in the neighborhood, we were just family. I mean, at the end of the day, and you could feel this connection, right? What else? Raise your hand.
Some resources that were there by
Let him get you the mic. Let him get you the mic, please.
You saw that your greatest resource was each other and working together in community.
And to this day, I still believe that. I mean, I kind of sit to myself and don't do, but when it comes to being around people and being with people, I feel like what my mama said is be kind to everybody because you never know who you might need in this world. And I really live that every single day, and I hope and pray I instill that in my child. And it's really about this whole way of, if I don't have, then I know that somebody who cares about me will give. But if I do have, then I have to give to other people. I feel like I don't have much of a choice. What else? Right here.
It sounds like your community had similar values so that the adults all were on the same page about what was expected of the kids or.
Yeah. And they really were. What the crazy part is, I found out when we got grown, my mama didn't even like half of them women that was chasing after me. But she wasn't mad at them for trying to discipline me, and she didn't judge or question what their intent was in trying to correct me in that situation, which was another benefit because I was allowed to be a child. My mama used to say, you got 18 years to be a kid and all the rest of your life to be grown. And they let us be children. And it was, to this day, I feel like that's something that really drives who I am as a person. One more.
It seems to me that it sort of illustrates the difference between being poor or being without money and being in poverty. Because clearly there wasn't money, but it wasn't poverty because there
Not
was
even slightly.
community and people working together.
And that's an incredible point, right? And my wife, dad owned an insurance company. She has to call home and ask, can she come home? My mom passed away, so my uncle and I are kind of like my surrogate parents. If I showed up on their doorstep tomorrow, they wouldn't say a word. My aunt would be a little mad because she didn't have the food prepared that I like. But that'd be about it, right? So it's way more than just material things. And I think that's why today I don't want people to give me presents. I mean, I sacrifice, I shouldn't say, it's not a sacrifice to me. I don't care about having material things. I'll give my wife and son everything. Because, I don't know, but you get it, right? You see how this works? So now that you've heard my story, if you were working with me, how would that influence the way you work with me, to have this understanding of how I see the world and how I see my problems?
You'd be very approachable.
Say again? He got on no dress shoes, don't make him run.
I think you'd be very approachable.
So, and that would inform the way you work with me, right? So now, what we're gonna do is, y'all gonna pair up. I don't care who you pair up with. Find somebody that you don't know that well, though, and pair up with them. So, find your partner, do-si-do. Quickly. Yeah. So now, Now, the first speaker in your pair will be the person who's shorter of the two of you. So that means the first person who will tell their story, like I did, will be the shorter person. And the listener will be the taller person. And I cannot say this hard enough. Listener, you can't say a word for 3 minutes. 3 solid minutes. You got it figured out?
That's close. I think you're taller just by here.
Yeah, she got on heels too. She got on heels, cheater. All right, so we're gonna start at the same time. And don't switch until I tell you to. So in 3, 2, 1, go. For most people, when they have an opportunity to actually talk, to really like speak, and for someone else to really hear them, well, you tell me, in this exercise, when you were the speaker, and that person handed you back your story with a different lens to it, how did that go? Raise your hand so you can bring in your mic. Thank you.
I guess it was somewhat validating in the sense it's sort of to hear that, he gets it, he understands,
And like he really cares about what you said, right? He had a genuine interest in what you were saying, so much so that he could actually interpret it. That's powerful. What about other people from the speaker lens? When you that interaction, we got 2 back there.
In our 2 stories, we found out that we have a lot of similarities. So my partner was talking about her childhood, and I was talking about moving here, but through our stories, we found out that we both came from Columbus, Ohio, and just these other connections, and we're like, oh, we really are similar in a lot of ways.
So there's a kind of a join up that form, right? A connection based on some commonalities, but just on a sense of caring about what the other person talked about. Yes, ma'am.
We had the same stories like yours, as family value, honesty, neighborhood, the love was shining every day, every morning, and then she grew up exactly the way I grew up, and she's giving me back the way I grew up.
Now think about this. The values that you were able to draw out of that person, like character traits that contribute to who they are as a person. How will that impact the relationship you have with the person you just partnered with? And you ain't got to answer that. It ain't our business. That's your business. But the key to it is it will impact it. Because now you know how that person sees the world. At least you got a glimpse into how it is. Now think about that cross-culturally. I'm the first person to say we are an African-American organization. We have a lot of African-American staff. But if you say that white people can't work with black people, or black people, then you have to say that black people can't work with other ethnicities, and vice versa, right? All around the realm. Using empathy can help to cross cultures. It doesn't mean that I know what it's like for you as a black male, but I can know how you as a human being see the world, and then I can take and incorporate pieces of your culture into that as I learn how you see your culture. The assumption that because I'm a black man, I act a certain way, you ain't grew up in the South. Trust me, the black folks I know back home are way different than the black folks I know up here. So, but you can see me as a human being, and you can get to know how I see the world, and that's what accurate empathy is. It's the ability to convey an understanding of what a person is trying to get across to you. Y'all cool with all that? Now, if you combine all this, that ain't but one piece of the spirit. But it says in the book, and there's actually a book on motivation there, that if you can embrace the spirit, especially acceptance, it'll reduce burnout. It'll increase like your willingness to engage with people at a deeper level, because I don't have to take ownership of the choices you make. And I don't have to judge you at all, right? It doesn't mean I condone your behavior, and I can hear how you see the world. Think about that with the students that you serve. Think about that with the parents that you might have to interact with. Just something. All right, so I got a little more time, so I'm gonna go a little further. So, usually we have a long discussion about this, but how many of y'all are good at giving advice? Oh yeah? I'm gonna tell you that more times than not, if a person's not ready to receive your advice, they're not gonna listen. If they feel like it's not their choice anymore, They're just gonna kind of yeah you to death. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. And then go do whatever they want to do. So within motivation interviewing, we talk about how to give advice in what we call an am I adherent way. And before you give that advice, ask yourself those two questions. One, have I truly taken the time to explore the client's ideas about their situation? Like how they feel about the circumstance. If I hadn't, then I probably should take time to do that first and then hand over my pearls of wisdom. The second question is what I'm about to tell them going to have value in the context of their world? I'm going to tell you that there's certain things that I think might work that will work for me because I'm 6'11", 450 pounds. Big in the waist, pretty in the face. You are not 6'11", so my approach may not be as effective for you, right? So is what I'm telling them of value to them? If the answer to either one of those questions is no, then don't give them the advice. Or do, I mean, it's your choice. But it's going to land on deaf ears. Because what we really want to work toward is really more of an information exchange. Not so much this like expert role, here's the information. And the way we go about doing this is through a method we call the EPE. Sorry, I jumped too many slides. EPE, elicit, provide, elicit. Now I want you to think about this. Before I hand over my wisdom, I'm going to inquire of you, what have you tried so far? What do you know about this situation? How do you feel this worked out for you? And I'm going to show a genuine interest, just like you just did in that empathy thing, right? I'm going to really flush that out. And if you need it, I'll provide the information. But I don't just hand it to you, I ask permission. Is it okay if I share some information with you? Is it okay if I give you some advice? Here's some things that work for other people. It may not have worked, I mean, it might not work for you. You'll be the best judge. And then I hand my wisdom. And on the back end of that, I hand them back their autonomy. What do you think about that? Where does that leave you? Does that help to inspire any new ideas, right? I always tell these stories about this. My son played basketball for Cretin-Durham Hall. Anybody know anybody who went to Cretin? They won a state championship last year. Jake made the all-tournament team. I mean, he was something else. Well, I'm gonna tell you, in 7th and 8th grade, I was a horrible sports dad. I was that dude that told him everything he did wrong in the game. And it was to the point where he would stay away from me. Like when the game was over, if they lost, he would avoid me like the plague, which was horrible. And so I did this in front of in front of my godfather. He said, Reggie, your son's gonna have 1,000 coaches. He ain't gonna have but one daddy. How about you be his daddy and let him coach you? And I thought, wow. And I know how to teach him eyes, so why don't I try some of this with him? Because you could use him to share information with people as well. Concerns, feedback. So this is how I work with me and Jacob Prince. After the game was over, if it was a win, we could kind of chop it up. But if it was a loss, we didn't talk until we got home. And if it was on the road, it would be like back at the hotel room. When we got back to the hotel room, I always began with the E. How do you feel you played in that game? What are some things you liked about your game? And I mean, I really take the time to listen and hear him. And in the 7th grade, he thought he was Baby Jordan. He really did. He looked more like, we ain't gonna talk about it. He's just flopping around all over the place. So I would ask permission, though, to give him my advice or my feedback. I'd say, okay, Jacob, is it okay if I share with you what I saw? Now, again, it's just my perception. And sometimes he'd tell me no. And guess what I did? Wouldn't complain to my wife, but I put it in my pocket. I didn't give it to him, right? Because that's his autonomy. He has the right to say no. But when he did, I'd provide him the feedback. And at the back end of it, I always close it off with, what do you think, though? Because that's just how I saw it. Now, imagine in the work that you do, and with the kids that you got, the students you serve, where are some opportunities where you would be able to use this actual skill? And talk at your table real fast. Some chances where you might be able to EPE, where it might be of benefit to do the EPE instead of share your wisdom. Go. Talk amongst yourselves, and he'll come around with the mic to report it. Carrie's going to come around real quick. Raise your hand if you have an example of where this would fit within the work you do. Well, you just got done talking about it. I'm sure you got something. I mean, come on. There you go. Thank you. Thanks for jumping on the grenade.
Yes. Well, I have a 3rd grade boy, and we start at 12:30, and so he is often a little tired. And when he's not feeling that way, we make great progress. And when he is, you can really turn it off.
Mm.
So I'm just thinking of how I might engage him in a conversation about whether he feels ready and what we could do to help, not what we could do, that would be advice, but does he feel ready?
You can give advice though.
Yeah.
And I don't want y'all to leave without that, with that impression. You can give advice, but if you explore with him, what are some things you think might help?
Yeah.
And then on the back end say, oh, can I share some with you?
Yeah.
And then tell him some of the ideas you have, right?
Okay.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you for jumping on the grenade. Good job. One more, and we'll move along. Oh, I'm country. I'm sorry.
I work with a super active fifth grader,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been making the suggestions, like, would you like to go for a walk out in the hollow and talk about this?
Mm-hmm.
But I could ask him
Yes.
what he would like to do, to move around, or sit in the beanbag chairs, or whatever it is. I think you think that choice.
Yes, ma'am. And if his choices are within a realistic stance, then you can provide the information, right? Wow, those are great ideas. And yet, there's some limitations to that. Is it okay if I tell you what we can do within what you said? And then you share the information. Again, I don't want y'all to leave here thinking that this is like some indictment of the way you've been with people. A lot of people experience this and they think, I don't do that. But I don't mean you did something wrong. I'm sure, you're volunteering your time. You probably got a good heart and good intentions when you're doing this. But the road to hell is paved with what? Yes, it is. That's why we want to be strategic in the way we approach things, right? And that's where MI comes in. So, I just got the hook from... I'm close to wrapping up anyway. So, I do want to share a little bit more about our organization and just kind of close it out because this is our plug. Quest we're new, but in the time that we've been around, we have really worked to awaken a lot of parents. In particular, the way we work with parents is, I think, the thing that separates us from other organizations, because we both work together at a nonprofit that shall go unnamed, and during that time, we recognized that things were done inefficiently. And a lot of times, it was more so about keeping the doors open than it was about actually helping people. So that's how we both quit at the same time. I turned in my resignation on Monday. He turned in his on Wednesday. I don't know why he didn't do it on Monday with me. That's a whole different discussion. Had me nervous for 2 days. But so the way we approach working with our families is we see the parent as truly the person, the protector, the nurturer of their children. We don't try to replace them in their role. And I think that's a big thing to get across, and I hope y'all leave with that. Because what we just showed you, we teach every one of our staff. Our whole approach is around acceptance. It starts there, and we move on from there, right? And we don't want to try to raise somebody else's child. We don't want to try to re-raise some adults. What we want to do is prevent instilling our values in them and help them to recognize that they do have values. They have worth. And be able to set their own kind of parameters around that. Why am I speaking to Quest as we wrap this thing up? Because, well, we need some volunteers too. Nah, just kidding. But you see the look on his face, don't you? If you're interested in knowing more about us, you can go to our website. It is basically our name, kwstbdg.org. This is not an MI training, I hate to tell you that. MI is a long process. Most people go through workshops. I teach level 1, level 2, intermediate courses. We do audio tapes to give clinical supervision. So I don't want to give you the impression that you are now MI practitioners. And at the same time, you got some useful stuff that you can apply when you get out of here. Thank you for your time. I appreciate you very much.